Hey, Inside Crypto people, welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin Weekly. We talk about Bitcoin and everything else in between. So lots of stories to talk about today. I don't even know where to start. We've got to talk about price. Bitcoin was at $71,000, but been hovering around that sort of range for the last few hours or so. The number of Bitcoin wallets drops to lowest level since 2018. Bitcoin price hits $70,000 as spot and BTC ETF buying surges. Ripple unveils Brazil fund for supporting local XRP ledger projects. To avoid danger, US must lead in crypto and blockchain. And last story for today is Fed is likely to cut policy rates in September. ECB will start lowering interest rates in June. All these stories and more on today's episode. Without further ado, let's get started jumping straight into today's Bitcoin price. All right, as I said, today's Bitcoin price hovering at the moment of recording $70,992.03, up 6.1%. If you look at the 24-hour range, Bitcoin was at $66,816 going back a few days ago, I believe. And then when the Fed announced, oh my God, yes, by the way, inflation seems to be cooling, and then everyone was positive, the stock market's gone up, everything seems to be on the up and up. And then, of course, there are other reasons for the price range that I cannot talk about today, but I'm sure you guys can guess why the price is going up the way it is today. We can talk about that as well in a later story. Yes, Bitcoin price looking very good. A lot of analysts and traders have hinted, okay, the previous consolidation phase is over. Now we could possibly see a new high. I remember the previous all-time high was around about $76,000, $77,000, depending where you were looking. So maybe we'd hit that $80,000, $85,000 mark. Who knows? Anyway, that is it for Bitcoin's price. If you know why it's gone up, please let me know. Comment down below. And let's jump into today's first story. Number of new addresses on the Bitcoin network, which approached its all-time high just 6 months ago, has fallen to its lowest level since 2018. I think there are a lot of reasons for this. The Bitcoin ETFs are a very good reason, right? We do have, as we've talked about in previous episodes, we do have the Hong Kong Bitcoin spot ETFs and ETH ETFs. So now if you want to get exposure to crypto, you don't have to open up a MetaMask, you don't have to open up a Lightning wallet or whatever wallet you want to use for Bitcoin. You can just buy it on your stock exchange, which is very easy and far easier than opening up a wallet. As somebody who has a crypto wallet, that thing gives me extra amounts of stress, which explains all the white hair that I have. So to me, the idea that the number of new wallets has fallen to its lowest level since 2018 makes 100% sense, right? Because if you're somebody who's, yeah, I want to buy some Bitcoin and you live somewhere in the world, right? You have the option of eToro, which supports the US Bitcoin ETFs, and eToro in most countries allows you to invest in the US stock market, and by proxy, right? That means you can get whatever Bitcoin ETF that you want. So that's the easiest option for people, right? To have this very safe, logical, easy way right through eToro. Or if you have a brokerage account in whatever country you want. Here in Taiwan, as I've talked about in the show, I can go to my local broker and say, hey, I want to buy this stock in America. No problem at all if I want to do this without doing the whole web eToro way. So there are a bunch of options. The Blocks article doesn't mention a specific reason why there are fewer newer addresses on the Bitcoin network. I think maybe the reason that I gave is correct. It does mention that a lot of key metrics are up. Novel protocols on the Bitcoin network are attracting record levels of interest from venture capital firms, as the block recently reported, potentially setting the stage for a comeback down the road. So that's really interesting. VC firms are getting interested in Bitcoin. And I think a lot of that has to do with name recognition as well, is that when you talk to people about crypto, 80% of people are like, yes, I know Bitcoin. I've heard of Bitcoin. I understand a little bit of what Bitcoin is. If you get past number one to number two, Ethereum, you're like, what is Ethereum, right? What does it do? And so it makes sense that if DeFi was to come to Bitcoin, again, check out our 21 Shares research analyst call, that would be the big thing in terms of name recognition, right? You could see a lot more onboarding of people into crypto, right? Even with MetaMask and other traditional wallets, because people are like, okay, I know Bitcoin. Because I know Bitcoin, I can get involved with decentralized finance. So that's a possibility. Maybe I'm crazy. Let me know. All right, today's second story by Nancy Lubale. Another story we've covered from her. Bitcoin price hits 70K as spot and BTC ETF buying surges. Analysts believe Bitcoin price is en route to new highs now that the recent consolidation phase has come to an end. For those of you who are new and you don't know what consolidation means, it's sometimes when price goes down and it comes down. So maybe it was at 76,000, it comes down to 67,000, and hovers around that level Consolidation means people are buying, people are selling, people are consolidating what they're doing in terms of their finances. And then when macroeconomic factors, when other factors come into play, they're like, okay, I'm done. Now let's start buying Bitcoin again because the economic system is looking good or some other reason like that. There's a bunch of reasons in this article. So as usual, please don't forget to check the links for the article down in the video. It says changing US monetary policy buoys Bitcoin price. In the broader economic context, Bitcoin's 51% year-to-date gain is reflective of investors' anticipation of US monetary expansion, which saw the M2 monetary base surpass 21 trillion in April 2024. This increase in circulating money hints at rising inflationary pressures despite a period of spending hesitancy by companies and individuals. The United States Federal Reserve strategies to manage inflation and avoid a recession could impact the liquidity and consequentially the attractiveness of scarce assets like Bitcoin. That is a very good point. Highlighting that is, like we've talked about this on last week's show, where people have hinted that the reason that inflation continues to rise is that people with much higher monetary assets, or people who have a lot more cash in the bank, have continued to spend, right? Continued to buy new cell phones and iPhones and MacBooks and iPad Airs, 4s, and that sort of stuff, right? To them, regardless of inflation, I want this stuff, I'm going to buy it. And this continues to drive inflation in the US at least. So that being said, the monetary supply is huge. The inflation issues are huge. We'll have to see how that plays out down the road. Today's third story, Ripple, the cryptocurrency services and payments company, has recently unveiled a local fund to support Brazil-based projects using XRP Ledger, the XRP asset blockchain. Julie Heitner, program manager of the XRPL grants program, stated that Brazil was the first country where this strategy would be implemented, given the nation's openness to blockchain initiatives. Ripple is in an interesting place, right? They are moving up in terms of what's happening legally speaking in the United States, and Ripple still has some really dedicated, quote-unquote, passionate supporters in the world. And, as we've talked about on this podcast before and interviewed previous guests, South America is going to be a huge place for cryptocurrency initiatives and people who want to do cryptocurrency projects. Cross-border payments is a huge thing, right? People do move around a lot. My personal prediction is cross-border payments are going to be a big thing in Africa in the next 5 to 10 years, just like they are in South America, just because with everything that's going on in Africa, in Northeast Africa as well, people are going to be moving around, finding the best places to work and earn money and that sort of stuff. And traditional finance systems are terrible, right? I've told you guys before how much money I pay when I have to traditionally transfer money to my brothers for a birthday present for a mother. Ripple's making a really good play. I believe Stellar, or XLM, as some of you guys might know, is one of the big players when it comes to cross-border payments in South America. So let's see how well XRP does, right? I think there can be a lot of good reasons and a lot of good projects that could be set up in Brazil. As to Brazil being open for cryptocurrency, I'm a bit surprised, just because Brazil's current president is quite a liberal left-wing president, and left-wing liberal people tend to not be super with blockchain technology, but maybe President Lula is different. That's wonderful for XRP. Let's see what happens in the future. All right, today's second to last story is an opinion piece in Newsweek. It's by Tim Ryan, president of We the People Action Fund, senior advisor, Progressive Policy Institute's campaign for working Americans. Those who came before us made certain that this country rode the waves of the Industrial Revolution, the first waves of modern invention, and the first waves of nuclear power. And this generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it. So this is a quote from President Kennedy half a century ago. This is a bunch of people who are like, okay, we need to be on top of blockchain technology. We need to be on top of distributed ledger technology. And this is why. And Tim Ryan is not the only person, right? There are a bunch of people who are like, okay, this is a really cool, really interesting, really novel technology. We should be using it. We should be taking advantage of it. And America has led previously when it comes to this sort of technology in a wide variety of areas, right? But over the last few years, when it comes to genetic research, when it comes to nuclear fusion, when it comes to building the best and most awesome supercomputer, America has faltered in some parts, right? Yeah, of course, America is definitely leading with OpenAI, with Microsoft, with Google's Gemini, but the Chinese are playing catch up and are doing it in a very fast way. I remember seeing an article about them announcing a huge token model that was better than OpenAI's. Whether that's true or not is another story. I think this is a wonderful article. I'm not going to go through it, but I think highlighting the points that it is worth it for blockchain technology to be promoted, to be advocated for, and I hope this works. That doesn't mean that I'm definitely not on the board with people who are like, okay, we should not regulate the stuff. I think it needs to be regulated, it needs to be governed, and that's totally fine. That's acceptable. But that doesn't mean just because we had FTX, just because we had this incident and that incident, that blockchain technology is a scam or something. And there are loads of bad things that did happen, but it is worth it. There are things that it can do better than other people. We talked about last week how the CEO of, I forget, Franklin Templeton said they did an experiment like, oh my God, this is super cheap. I can't believe this is much cheaper than the way we traditionally do things at Franklin Templeton. Again, which is not surprising to anyone in crypto because we know blockchain technologies are cheaper than certain traditional finance technologies. So I hope that people do get on board with this. I hope the American government gets on board with this, that they do support what blockchain could become in the future. All right, today's last story is from FX Street. You guys know I love to include some macroeconomic article. I'm usually positive there, and this is somewhat positive. This is a really cool summary done a day ago. So I'm recording on May 21st. This is done on the 20th. It says, summary, we have not made significant changes to our economic forecast this month. We continue to believe the global economy can grow by 3% this year, even as geopolitical tensions have introduced some new uncertainties. Forecast profiles for major economies have also not changed materially. In our view, the US economy, while on pace to achieve a soft landing, is slowing while economic recoveries in the Eurozone and UK are underway. That's always great news. In our view, the Fed is likely to cut policy rates in September, as we just literally talked about that a few minutes ago. However, we believe risks are tilted toward a later shift to more accommodative Fed monetary policy. Internationally, we maintain our view that the ECB will start lowering interest rates in June, while the Bank of England will likely make its pivot in August. Our most noteworthy central bank forecast changes in Brazil. Given the most recent policymaker communications and fears of fiscal loosening, we now believe the PCB policymakers will keep rates on hold throughout the end of 2025. Wow, that is impressive. Really interesting. This is actually not a very long article, but I don't want to keep you guys here. The main plots are there. As much as some people may hate us focusing on the Americans and Europe, this does drive international monetary policy. It looks like the world economy, the global economy, is on an okay path. Not a fantastic path. 3% growth is actually pretty good. Loosening of monetary policy in Europe and America is definitely going to impact the rest of the world. So things are looking good, and that could bode well for crypto and stocks and other things as well. So if you're positive about all of that, please let me know. What do you think is going to happen in the next 6 months? We're halfway through 2024, and the world has experienced a lot of changes. Still lots more to undergo. Who knows what's going to happen? So hope you guys enjoyed today's stories. I'm still on the process of lining up some guests for June and July. I did have one for June, but that guest had a few requirements that don't quite have the time to prepare for. So we're going to lean on my friend David, who's been providing us some amazing guests before. We're going to talk to a YouTuber hopefully in July. He has an amazing channel. I won't tell you who he is right now. Just keep your fingers crossed. And then we will talk to you guys the same time next week for more stories, more news, more Bitcoin. Take care.